My dear brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ, about 1,500 years ago, a young man abandoned his possessions, a very promising career, and went into a cave in Subiaco in Italy to spend a life of solitude, a life of hermitage for 3 years, to contemplate on things that are divine. And that was the beginning of monastic life. And that young man was Benedict, who was disillusioned by corruption and immoral life at the university in Rome, where he decided to seclude himself, to run away from the evils of the world, to be aligned to things that are divine, as he spent this time in solitude in this cave at Subiaco. Undoubtedly, Benedict would become one of the most pivotal figures in Western Christian civilization. And we need to appreciate Saint Benedict, whose feast we celebrate today, in the context of his time. Benedict was born around 460 AD. His twin sister is Scholastica, who is also a saint. He comes from a noble family from Norcia in Italy. Benedict, when he was born, it was the time when the Roman civilization was coming to an end. It was crumbling down. And out of the rubbles was the rise of the barbarian culture or civilization. And so why does Benedict become a pivotal figure in shaping Western civilization? Because when the Roman culture fell, when the Roman civilization was coming to an end, Benedict was instrumental in preserving what was best of the Roman civilization as he shaped the Western civilization and the whole Christendom and Christian culture. And that's why without Benedict, there would be no great figures who would come down the line like Thomas Aquinas, like Michelangelo, and even Henry John Newman. It begins with what Benedict had started. He paved the way for Christian civilization, Western Christian civilization, that made possible for great men and women to rise down the line. What was the most significant contribution of Benedict to monastic life? He was not the one to first start a monastic life. Anthony the Hermit in the 3rd century already started the monastic life. It was already a kind of a trend. We have the Latin phrase fuga mundi, flight from the world. They thought the world was evil, and they went into the desert to be aligned with God. And that's what drew Benedict to a life of seclusion in a cave. But that started the formation of monastic life, religious community life, and that was made possible through the rule of Benedict, which became the template for many religious orders and congregations down the line, and became the template for a civilized world itself. What was so unique, what was so special about the Benedict rule? Regula, what we call in Latin. What Benedict introduced was not something new. The rule already existed. But what Benedict did was refine that rule, picking in the best of the Roman civilization and incorporating into this rule, which becomes the template for many religious congregations and orders. Regula, the Benedictine rule, opens with the word listen. The very opening word of the rule is listen. The people of Israel were invited to become a listening people. And the failure of our first parents, Adam and Eve, was the failure to listen to God's command. And that's why we have the fall. The sin of disobedience was a failure to listen to God. They disobeyed God's command. And with the call of Abraham and the formation of people of Israel, Abraham becomes the template of listening. He listened to the voice of God, and from him comes the chosen race, the people of Israel. And when Benedict wrote that opening word, he was reminded of what the people of Israel were from the book of Deuteronomy. Shema, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. The Lord your God is one God, that you may love him with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your people as you love yourself. Shema, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. It is in listening that one can be obedient to God, and obedience becomes the vow of monastic life, of religious life. It comes from a spirit of listening. And that's something that we can imbibe to refine our own lives, our own cultures. Flowing from the word listen was radical poverty, a life of simplicity of the Benedictine order. You can walk into any of the Benedictine monasteries across the world, you will see the simplicity of their lifestyle. Along with listening, obedience, radical poverty was the call to prayer. Prayer was at the very heart of the Benedictine life. Just like how the Jews prayed 7 times, so did the Benedictines pray 7 times. And all their prayers were about the Psalms, reflecting on the mood and the spirit of the Psalms. The Lectio Divina, a method of praying with the Bible, was originated by the Benedictines. And every time the bell would go, 7 times the day, they would leave whatever they are doing and would gather as a community to pray and chant the Psalms, to meditate their minds and hearts on the Word of God. Along with the Psalms and praying was labor. They are invited to work in the field, use their hands to work. And that's how you have the adage of the Benedictines, ora et labora, work and prayer, or prayer and work. The instruments of labor is a reminder that these instruments are sacred instruments of the very altar, that their work becomes prayer, and join in the rhythm of prayer and the rhythm of work. Ora et labora. Another beautiful aspect of the Benedictine life was the call to humility. And Benedict would lay down about 12 degrees of humility. To humble oneself and to align one's heart and mind to the heart and will of God. To denounce one's will in order to absorb the will of God. The spirit of humility was the hallmark of any Benedictine monk. And finally, a beautiful aspect of the Benedictine monastery, I had the privilege of being in Monte Cassino, which is one of the most beautiful monasteries built by Benedict himself around the year 530. And this Monte Cassino is a house that welcomes people. Not just Monte Cassino, but any Benedictine monastery should be open to guests. A spirit of hospitality. That people could just walk into their monastery, join the monks in prayer, and just to be there as they chant the Psalms was a spirit of a divine experience of being one with God. We need a Benedictine moment today. In a time of decadence of our own culture, when we are facing moral decadence, we need a revival of our own culture, our own civilization, just like how Benedict did, to refine, to take what's best and to purify them so that we may glorify God and give praise to God through prayer and work. Let's today pray for all the Benedictines across the world and for ourselves, that we too may be refined and purified through work and prayer. Amen.